your right to rock the boat is only commensurate with your willingness to row the boat. Lots of people like to rock, whether it's on Facebook or among their group of friends. For us, we like to rock the boat too, but we're willing to row the boat. And that's what I'd encourage my brothers and sisters and neighbors who may have an opinion about something. Be a part of the solution, be a part of the change that you want to see, which is another well-known quote. But it is about getting involved, and that's how we overcome hurdles, whatever they may be, that we are here to make this community better, especially since I've openly said we want to spend the rest of our life here. So why not invest what little talent and energy and resources we may have in making the community better?
Welcome to the Americus podcast, where we pursue what it means to become a next-level neighbor, creating a place we enjoy with the people we love. I'm your host, John Schroeder, and today I am joined by Carlyle Walton. Carlyle is the CEO of Phoebe Sumter Medical Center right here in Americus, Georgia. Carlyle, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm always humbled for the opportunity to share, especially at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I remember the first time we actually met each other, it was at a city event. It was downtown. We were having fun. We run into each other. Got a chance to meet you and your wife. And we talked a little bit about you moving in, renting a place. And then I heard that you've got a new place now, a new home. So are all the boxes put away now? Is everything good? Or are you still trying to get settled in?
I think there are about 4 boxes left in the garage. And my wife and I are both lovers of books. And all of the bookcases and bookshelves are stocked full. And so we've got to decide, do we give some of the books away or do we get another bookcase or build another bookshelf? But for the most part, everything is where Astrid would like it to be.
Absolutely.
And once it's where she would like it to be, then we're a happy camper.
I know. My wife loves books. We always go to the library, get just stacks of books. She would love tons of library space. And so that's always a good problem for us to have is what do we do with all these great books? So that's very exciting. So CEO, what other titles do you hold? And tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I was recruited to join the Phoebe Putney Health System back in July of 2022. So we recently celebrated our 2nd anniversary being a part of the system. And the title that I hold, and titles, that's something I try not to get too caught up in, but my official title is I'm the CEO of the Phoebe Sumter Medical Center and a senior vice president of the Phoebe Putney Health System. So I'm a part of the senior executive team for the system.
Absolutely. Now, healthcare, we've had some nurses here before. We've had teachers here before. It's about people. It's about relationships. It's not just about the medical side of it. There's values that are rooted in your life that have pulled you to care for people in this way. Where does that come from? Tell us a little bit about you. Just where did you grow up? What was your family dynamics? Just tell us a little bit about Carlyle.
Absolutely honored to do that. I was born in British Guiana, South America. At the time, it was one of the remaining English colonies. As a matter of fact, the only remaining English colony on the continent of South America. And one of the unique things that created is even today, even though it is the Republic of Guyana, it's now an independent nation, it still is the only English-speaking country on the South American continent.
Wow.
So our neighbors are Suriname, they speak Dutch there. French Guiana or Cayenne, they speak French. You've got Venezuela and Brazil, where variations of Spanish, Portuguese are spoken. So almost by default, even though we are on the South American continent, we associated with the English-speaking islands of the Caribbean.
Okay.
But I had through my high school education, and that was the British educational system. That's where I grew up in Guyana. I have two siblings, two sisters. I'm big brother.
Oh,
and the older of the two, she is a nurse manager in Memphis, and my youngest sister has a doctorate in social work and is a professional counselor and social worker.
Yeah.
Our parents, who are both deceased, my mom was a surgical nurse for the better part of 45 years.
Wow.
So we were exposed from childhood to healthcare. And, even though we lived in Guyana and mom was one of the few on-call nurses, because whenever a surgery needed to occur, she was called there in working at that community hospital. We just had a connection from childhood with healthcare.
Yeah.
Now, a part of our journey, we immigrated to the United States of America in 1982 as a family. My dad's younger brother sponsored us to come to New York City, and that's where we began our American journey.
Yeah.
And eventually we all became citizens of this great land. You come in as a resident alien, which I always found was an interesting term when you arrive. But we came here as resident aliens, got a green card, which, by the way, happened to be blue. But everybody refers to it as a green card. And then eventually we all became citizens of this great land.
Yeah.
Honored, delighted to call America home. My education, as I said, started in high school, then went to Trinidad and Tobago, which is the closest Caribbean island to Guyana. And there I attended, believe it or not, there is another USC, the University of the Southern Caribbean. It's a faith-based school in Maracas Valley in Trinidad and Tobago. That's where I met my wife. Now, Astrid and I have been best friends for 44 years, and we've been married for 39 years.
That's
so
awesome.
Consider myself richly blessed. We both came to America to continue our education. Stayed connected over the years, got married, as I said, 39 years ago. As a matter of fact, the 4th of January of 2025 will be our 40th anniversary. So
congratulations.
We're just blessed. Yeah. And in the process, God blessed us with 2 American-born and raised children. We have a son, the older of the 2, Christopher. He is 35 years old and works as an attorney for the state of Texas. I think he's having a rough week this week because he went to law school at the University of Texas. And, they just lost to Georgia. So I think, Georgia took away their #1 ranking. And and our daughter, Ashley, she's 33. She lives in Pittsburgh. She's a registered architect. So I tell people we're very blessed. I mean, Astrid and I are richly blessed. We have 2 children who love Jesus and pay their own bills. Yeah. So I'm a happy father.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Yeah. Now, growing up with your mom being in the healthcare system, did you ever have like a love-hate relationship with that, of like feeling that it was kind of pulling away from time with your mom, and then but just also just falling in love with it and just seeing its importance and its impact in people's lives? I know, like my son as a pastor, there's this like, okay, I don't want to go home, right, and make my son feel like, well, I'm just doing this because this is what our family does. Right. Did that ever happen to you as a child, or did you just always just see healthcare as something that you wanted to pursue as well?
First of all, I did not see healthcare as something I wanted to pursue. I loved accounting. As a matter of fact, I'm still a certified public accountant. I tell people I'm a fossilized CPA because I really haven't practiced in quite a few years. But it's an interesting question that you just asked, and it made me reflect on the fact that growing up, I was surrounded and raised by a community. I truly had a village. So even though mom was gone quite a bit, we had neighbors who took care of me, who nurtured me, who just helped me grow as a child and then as a teenager. So I never experienced that kind of separation or resentment because mom was gone a lot. I mean, she was always on call, it seemed like to me. But I just had that support network. And reflecting on your question, never felt abandoned or I wasn't getting enough of mom and dad's time. Yeah. But I always liked accounting. So that's what I pursued. Okay. But my mom, for some reason, wanted me to become a pastor. Oh, okay. And which, again, not specifically healthcare related. So interestingly enough, when I pursued my baccalaureate degree, I'm probably the only graduate from Columbia Union College in Washington, D.C. to Tacoma Park, Maryland with a double major in accounting and religion. Okay. It's kind of an interesting combination. Yeah. But I always liked understanding different religions of the world, people's faith heritage and background, because I believe so much of who we are is tied up in that. Yeah. And I wanted to pursue that and understand it. But after graduating, I completed my CPA and my career began with public accounting. In my official career, I should say, working with, back then it was Ernst & Whinney, now Ernst & Young, the CPA firm. Okay. All right. So tell me a little bit of that journey of, well, first, growing up, personality, introvert, extrovert, like who was Carlyle growing up? Sociable, got a lot of things going on, sports, anything like that? I always enjoyed being around people. I mean, my challenge was, if there was a knock on my report card, is Carlyle talks too much. So, I had conversations, or my parents had conversations with me, but just enjoyed being around people and relationships. And to this day, for me, life is about relationships and the relationships that I build. So if personality profiles show me to be someone who is extroverted, but I like my quiet time also. So it's a combination, I guess, of the two. And that is how I seek to live my life. When my wife will tell you that she's not the big one to go to, even though she's a lot more, in my opinion, extroverted than I am. She's like, when we go to these social events, I'm not a fan of just standing around during the happy hour and talking with people. And you do that so easily. And I think a lot of it has been professionally developed in me to just listen to people. And I always try to remember the advice of my maternal grandmother, who used to say when I wanted to talk too much, son, remember God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. So listen twice as much as you speak. Yeah. So do you think that's a really great, because as I was listening to you, the idea that it takes a specific, personality, obviously, set of skills to be an active listener, to be able to do that well. Do you feel like where did that come from? Is it, from family, just those investments into you? I believe so. I mean, I loved both of my parents, but my mom probably had a more profound impact on my development of my soft skills, as we call them. And mom was an excellent listener, just oozed hospitality, and not because she was my mother, but just well loved by people, because she was really an excellent listener. Yeah. So I would say, based on your profession and getting to know you a little bit, that, I mean, part of, or a major part of your role is listening to people. Do you have someone that just gets a chance to listen to you? My wife is excellent at that. She really is. She's my rock. Yeah. And that's awesome. With her, I can be unfiltered and she can be unfiltered. I mean, we truly, a lot of couples say this, but we grew up, we met in our teenage years, and we became best friends, and then our relationship grew. But she is the person who can not only listen very well to me, but knows me better than anyone else. You know, if I'm wrestling with something professionally, I don't even have to say anything to her. She would just say to me, babe, there's something on your mind. You want to talk about it?
Yeah.
And sometimes I choose to, other times, probably more to protect her and the social circles she may be in. You know, I would say, you're correct.
Yeah.
And very often, because we're people who seek to live our faith. And we'll just pray about it.
Yeah.
And there's that peace that washes over you, and you realize you're not only taking it to God, but you have someone who shares that journey with you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's good, because I know as far as, you know, I read a lot of leadership books, and there's just, as a leader, you carry so much, and it's just really great to have people that will help you in that load, because your responsibility is not to unload on your people, to love them and serve them, but it's a heavy weight that you carry, even for our community. So thank you so much for doing that for us.
Well, thank you
for listening to others, especially when some of the conversations, and we could talk about this a little bit later too, but just some of the conversations are based on maybe false assumptions or expectations, or maybe false information. And the way that you have to carry yourself and listen, not to win an argument, but to understand people, it takes a lot. So I appreciate your love for people to be able to do that.
Well, thank you very much. You know, it was 1989, one of my mentors gave me a little book titled Leadership is an Art by Max Dupree.
Okay.
And that book continues to influence my life. You know, there are multiple definitions of leadership, but I love Max's definition of leadership. And he wrote, a leader's first job is to define reality. A leader's last job is to say thank you. In between, the leader is a servant and a debtor.
Wow.
And that, I have it memorized, not because I wanted to memorize it, but I just fell in love with the fact that it embodies leadership in so many ways. You know, a lot of people want to lead, but because they want everybody to like them, they're reticent to define reality, especially if that reality is difficult news that they have to communicate.
Yeah.
At the back end, your last job is to say thank you. And it's about seeing everyone in my eyes, because of my faith heritage, you know, it's just a priceless, invaluable child of God. Yeah. Even the person who got under your skin and may have triggered you. Yeah. And then in between, the call is to be a servant and a debtor. And I smile because servant leadership as a leadership theory, as a secular leadership theory, continues to grow in popularity. Yeah. And I'm like, you know, all you need to do is read the Bible. And the ultimate servant leader is embodied in there. Yeah. So I smile when I think it's Robert Greenleaf in the mid-70s gets credit for discovering the leadership theory of servant leadership.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, okay, so you're pursuing as far as education, CPA, religious studies. So, tell me, how does that transition to healthcare?
Good question again. I worked for, as I said, the CPA firm, the international accounting firm at the time, Ernst & Whinney, and I stayed with them for 3 years in public accounting, and I would say about 75% of the audits, I was an auditor, that I participated in were healthcare related. And not just hospitals, but, you know, continuing care retirement communities. We were in Florida at the time, in Orlando, and I just learned a lot about the various facets of healthcare. And it continued to speak to my heart that this is something that I would enjoy doing. Now, initially, it was strictly from the finance perspective. So one of our audit clients at the time They were called Adventist Health System Sunbelt.
Okay.
They're now Advent Health. They offered me an opportunity. Really, they offered me 3 opportunities to be the CFO at 3 organizations that they started at the time. One was in Florida. 2 were in Florida, one was in Texas, Killeen, Texas. Yeah. And much to the surprise of so many people, because the least attractive one was the one in Killeen, Texas. But that's the one that my wife and I, after visiting Killeen and talking through it and praying about it, that's the one we took.
Wow.
And clearly it was driven by the visionary CEO who ended up being one of my mentors, now deceased, but Sam Leonor, that he had a vision for what was a sleepy, 1-story, forlorn-looking hospital. Yeah. He wanted to see it become truly a community asset. Wow. And that just captured my imagination, my desire to be a part of his team. So we moved to Killeen, Texas, when my wife was very pregnant, with our son, and our son was born in Texas. Wow. It's kind of interesting. 35 years later, he works for the state of Texas, and it was a unique time because soon after we arrived there, and Killeen, Texas is where Fort Hood resides. And it's now Fort Cavazos. It's been renamed. But Fort Hood still is the Army's largest force projection platform in the United States. More troops and hardware, military hardware there. Put it in perspective, the land that Fort Hood covers, where it is located, Washington, D.C., can fit into Fort Hood 5 times, and there'd be land left over.
Wow.
As they say, everything's bigger in Texas,
right? Yeah, I was
right?
about to say, yeah.
So we were the civilian hospital that served a predominantly military community. And, soon after my arrival there, Desert Storm occurred. And that was a very defining time for our hospital because we had just finalized the master plan. We were getting ready to expand the facility, build a 5-story tower, and then the military base just dried up because the troops were deployed. And I remember kneeling with Sam Leonor and the other members. There were 2 other members on our senior leadership team. It was a small, hospital the size of Phoebe Sumter, 78 beds. And we were getting ready to expand 5 stories, and the community has just dried up. Yeah. And we had no idea how long the war was going to be. But we sought God about it, and God, what we felt was very clear direction that we needed to proceed. Now, people give us credit years later for being geniuses, but it wasn't about us. So we went ahead with a construction project in the middle of an economic downturn in the community. If you recall, that war lasted about 6 months, and then thousands of troops came back to the community. And we were appropriately positioned and ready to support that influx, and the hospital just took off and continues to be very successful. But I began my journey there in healthcare, worked for...
That must have given you great confidence in moving into the next, and then even to the next stage or next phase of your life is seeing that. It's like, wow, this is great. So,
I mean, just seeing God's hand. And as I said, I was in finance at the time, and Sam and I, after working together for just a couple of years, I will always remember he sat me down and he said, you love people and you have too much of a personality to be a finance guy. Are you interested in operations? I said, sure, I'd be happy to try it. So my next step was to be the vice president of operations. As the hospital grew, we added a 3rd campus. Okay. We had 2 campuses there. One was dedicated to behavioral health. The other was it became from the 78 beds to a 148 bed community hospital. Wow. And then we acquired a critical access hospital about 27 miles west of our main campus. I had the privilege of going there, living in that community. It was a shuttered hospital. Getting it reopened, that was just one of those highlights of my professional journey in Lampasas, Texas. And my wife and I, with 2 young babies at the time, just were embraced and loved by that community. And they paid us when we decided to relocate the ultimate tribute we felt by basically giving the hospital that they had owned to the system in our honor. And that was a pretty special tribute that of the things we've been blessed with in our life, just being embraced and loved by a community. And for them to express it in that way, we were most thankful.
I love that. Now, so that's where you started. You've been also to Washington, correct?
Correct.
You moved there. So tell me a little bit about that, but then tell me what brought you to Americus. How did you get here?
Well, the Washington trip was, one of the things, and I'm thankful I have a wife who has this perspective. We have learned to leave our professional journey in God's hands. We never sat down and did a master plan that said, okay, you're here and then you need to be there. And in 5 years, you need to be here. We've just left it in his hands. And we were in Texas for 9 years. And this was our second trip back there where I became the CEO of the 3 hospitals where I was the CFO before. And we were there for 9 years. And I've always believed in community engagement. I think it is a responsibility of someone in a position of leadership, especially within healthcare. So while there in Killeen, Texas, first time I ever ran for elected office, at the encouragement of some community folks, and ended up being elected to be a member of the 7-member board of trustees of the local school district.
Okay.
And because of the connection to the military, the Killeen Independent School District at the time had about 45,000 students, 7,000 employees, massive school district.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I learned a lot. But during that time, I also made a few trips to Washington, D.C. to advocate for continued federal funding for our school district. Because of the connection to the military base, we were heavily federally funded. Got a chance to meet, some of the members of Congress from our Texas congressional delegation and just enjoying that. And in 2018, just a little context, there are 5 7-day Adventist health systems that serve in the United States. And together they employ about 160,000 people. And they serve 16 states and the District of Columbia, close to 100 hospital campuses. So collectively, even at that time, they were by far the largest Protestant healthcare system in the United States. And the 5 system CEOs got together and they had their discussion, and then they laid hands on me and said, we need to have a stronger presence in Washington, D.C. In helping to shape the debate around healthcare and how to effectively serve, how to bend the cost curve, because, healthcare continues to just skyrocket as a part of our gross domestic product. And they said, we'd like you to go to DC and open an office. And we decided to call it the Adventist Health Policy Association. So we were able to get some space pretty close to the Capitol, about 3 blocks from the Capitol, and officially opened the office November the 1st of 2018. And that's when my official DC journey began, where I basically walked the halls of Congress, both the House and the Senate, and worked on building relationships, never knowing that just over a year later, this thing called COVID-19 and the pandemic would arrive. And because of those relationships that had been built, we were able to salvage any of our hospitals that may have been on the brink of, not making it through. And just thankful that I really believe that in divine appointments.
Yeah.
And being there at that time, one of the things we did in the first year I was there was to work with a team from Loma Linda University Medical Center, the Institute of Health Policy, to develop a book titled 5 Steps to Health and Wellness in America. And the entire focus was on healthcare and not sick care. A lot of people, unfortunately, think healthcare and sick care are synonymous. But the focus was, what are the things that we can do from a societal and a social and a wellness perspective to seek to bend the healthcare cost curve? So it was a great journey. And,
more like proactive healthcare. Is that what you mean?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Preventative care.
Yeah. That's great.
There's so many things that we all can do.
That's right.
To be more preventative than reactive. And our healthcare model, unfortunately, was built on hospitals and doctors getting paid. The more they do, the more they got paid. Now, there is a lot of debate nationally, and it's slowly gaining traction on what's called value-based care, where providers of care are rewarded for keeping people healthy instead of taking care of them when they're sick. But after doing that for about 4 years, I just started to feel the itch to be back in operations. I loved what I did in DC. My wife loved living there. We reconnected with a lot of friends from our days, living in Maryland and those places. But so again, kind of got on our knees and said, okay, God, this is what I want, but I want you to open the door for us. And it took, he has a way of taking his own time sometimes, but it took about a year.
Okay.
And then in May, a recruiter who had been trying to recruit me for years called up and said, now I know that, you've led larger facilities, but there's this wonderful smaller community with a 7 to 6 bed hospital. It's a part of a larger system. They'd like you to have a system role too. So in May of 22, I interviewed, got a chance to meet Scott Steiner, who leads our system. And then they invited me for an in-depth interview here. My wife and I spent 3 days, combination of Americus and in Albany.
Yeah.
We affectionately refer to it as the Phoebe Gauntlet, but I interviewed with 28 people. And I guess I'd end that part of the journey with this story. The last person I interviewed with was Scott, our system CEO. And he knew that I'd been talking to lots of people and sitting for the entire day. So when I went to his office, he said, let's go take a walk. And we walked out of his office and got onto the sidewalk. And he just wanted to show me some of the construction plans that were at the time just barely underway to expand the main campus. And as we got onto the sidewalk, there was a half-eaten plate of food on the sidewalk. And without saying anything, I watched him pick it up. And then we walked and talked. And when he got to the first trash receptacle, he placed it in there. And when I returned to the hotel to meet my wife, again, as I told you, she knows me really well. She said, I guess if they offer you this job, you're going to take it, right? And I said, why would you say that? She said, I could see it in your eyes. Wow. And I shared that story with her, that's the kind of leader I want to work for. Not someone who walks by a half-eaten plate of food and trash on the sidewalk, but who didn't think himself too important to pick it up. And that just impressed me. And the reality is, in the now just over 2 years that we've been here, Scott continues. I mean, he is highly accountable and rigorous in what he expects. But he is just very consistent in having that kind heart and a servant's heart. And, I tell people, I've been doing what I've been doing now in varying capacities for 30 years. I'm in the fourth quarter of my career. I think I have about another 7 to 8 good years left. And between what little we saw of this community, we're looking for a place that we want to call home for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
So the community, the culture at Phoebe, our vision statement, and my colleagues tease me because I don't wear much jewelry, but the bracelet I wear, it has our vision statement engraved on it. And my wife bought it for me on Father's Day.
Wow.
A little over a year ago. And she said, babe, I see how passionate you are about the vision of this organization. And I just wanted to give this to you as a gift. And our vision statement simply says, to make every life we touch better. I can't think of a more important reason to wake up every morning, to go to work, to ensure that we're making every life, whether internal or external, that we touch better.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And we just moved here pretty much right around the same time. I think that you moved here. Yep. We've been here a little over 2.5 years now. And we want to call this our home. We want to be here. We want our kids to be invested here. And this has just been a really great community for us. And so we come from a little bit of a bigger city, which is Albany. So it's 77 to 100,000, 15,000 here. But just have really enjoyed learning about the history and the values here. But I do know, like, obviously in a smaller town with a smaller community, there are obstacles, hurdles that are different, in bigger cities. So how do you deal with personally and also professionally with some of what are the hurdles that people fall into in this community, and how is the hospital being able to kind of address those?
Well, absolutely. I always tell folks that hurdles become lower when you decide to invest yourself in a community. And again, I'm thankful that I have a spouse who, wherever we have lived, we both make the commitment to make it our home. And a lot of people, they have a house, but making a place a home is a lot more intentional. And we just seek to make friends and learn from people and get involved. And, every place has its hurdles. I mean, just being very transparent, and it's who I seek to be. There are people who, after they've interacted with us, they're like, okay, you're putting on airs, right? This is an act, and we seek to be authentic. It's who we are. Yeah. And we matriculate with people from all walks of society. It's like my wife and I, we developed a habit of having date night on Friday nights. Once, we're both around and we can do it. And we go to Pat's place for date night, and meet all sorts of wonderful people there. My wife has volunteered at the Harvest of Hope, the food pantry. And it just gives her a lot of fulfillment being a part of the intake team. I'm a firm believer, and this is a bit philosophical, but Jean-Paul Sartre, the French writer and philosopher and provocateur, one of my favorite statements from him is he wrote that your right to rock the boat is only commensurate with your willingness to row the boat. Lots of people like to rock, whether it's on Facebook or among their group of friends. For us, we like to rock the boat too, but we're willing to row the boat. And that's what I'd encourage my brothers and sisters and neighbors who may have an opinion about something. Be a part of the solution, be a part of the change that you want to see, which is another well-known quote. But it is about getting involved. And that's how we overcome hurdles, whatever they may be, that we are here to make this community better, especially since I've openly said we want to spend the rest of our life here. So why not invest what little talent and energy and resources we may have in making the community better?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I agree. When it comes to hospitals, we talked about this even right before the podcast. I mean, things are becoming very, a a lot more with robotics, a lot more with technology. Really excited about those things. What are some things that you're really excited about right now? But and then how do you even? I don't even want to say counter, but being relational, being a relationship person, when things are going more technical, how do you balance those out?
Well, I always remind people, especially in this era when everyone is talking about AI, just remember that artificial intelligence is based on what humans have done and will continue to do. So at the end of the day, the relationships will always matter. And using your judgment and being able to discern. Right now, if you ask me a question, I can put it into Chat GPT, and Chat GPT will share a very eloquent answer with me. It's up to me to still use my judgment and say, does this make any sense?
Yeah.
And is it relevant to our community? But I think going back to your specific question, at the end of the day in healthcare, we will always be a high touch more than a high tech business.
Yeah.
I've never had a patient, even before we started getting into robotics and we were doing things laparoscopically with small incisions with surgeries. I've never heard a patient say to me, that was a beautiful laparoscopic procedure. Every compliment I've received is, they were gracious to me.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
They were gracious to me. They looked me in the eye. They listened to me.
Yeah.
They explained things in detail to me. Every compliment comes from a high-touch experience and not a high-tech experience. Yes, we've got,
That's right.
One of the best robots from Da Vinci now at our hospital, and we've had it there for over a year. But at the end of the day, I haven't had a single person who has shared with me, I really love your robot.
Yeah.
They really don't care about that. It's about the relationships. I love my surgeon.
Yeah.
He or she explained things to me in detail.
Yeah.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
So I don't think we ever have to worry that we will lose sight of that part of it. The technology needs to be used to make us more efficient. I mean, a good example in studies that have been done, one of the biggest benefits of robotic surgery is that the surgeon gets a chance to sit and manipulate the arms of the robot, as opposed to how surgery has been done for how many years. If it's an 8-hour surgical case, that surgeon is standing up all the time.
Yeah.
So it has been shown that it prolongs the career of surgeons by having that technology. So we need to use the technology where it can make us more efficient, where it can help to prolong careers.
Yeah.
And so I tell people all the time, technology is amoral. It's neither good or bad.
Yeah.
It's how we choose to use it as individuals.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you said that, I was thinking about how if someone needs to go get a surgery or something, they'll always say, well, what doctor do you use? It's always like, I know that doctor. And that could be a good thing. That could not be a good thing.
Yeah.
And so they're talking not necessarily about, just the place or the city, but the doctor.
Absolutely.
Who do you, because you're talking about life decisions, even small decisions are life decisions. And so they want a person that they can trust. And so I know that's, again, part of what I feel like you're bringing value to. It's not just, hey, what can we perform? What can we do? But who are we bringing to bear upon a community that is looking for people that they can trust over time, correct?
Absolutely. And you can ask any member of our leadership team at Phoebe Sumter, and they will tell you one of Carlyle's mantras is that we have to stop living with a scarcity mindset and live with an abundance mindset. We have amazing people at Phoebe Sumter. Amazingly resilient, highly competent, very patient and family focused. But one of my primary responsibilities is to move them from where we are to who we can become. We have to grow with our community. As a matter of fact, we've got to stay a step ahead of our community. So if tomorrow a new business shows up here with 350 employees, just to pick a number, we've got to be prepared to serve those people and their families instead of saying, well, we don't have the resources to do that. So it's that delicate balance of thinking with that abundance and progressive mindset and not thinking, well, we're just little Phoebe Sumter. This is all that we can do. Because I think we have not just in our most important resource, our people, but even with the fact that we sit on a 385, almost a 400-acre campus, in a few weeks, I will have someone coming out to do a master plan for our campus, because we've got to be ready to continue to grow, to serve and augment our community. You know, I've had the privilege of participating in various economic development initiatives in other communities we have lived in. And typically, it's the school system and healthcare somewhere in the top 3 of resources that businesses look at when they're trying to decide, should we come to this community or not? So we've got to be ready. We've got to be progressive and forward thinking.
Yeah. And I also noticed that, you know, Atlanta is really only 2 hours away. You know, there are people that see Americus as something that they can come and just stay and live, and they can just drive back and forth, especially with so much online stuff now with businesses where you can do things at home. And so this community has a great opportunity to continue to see it thrive. And so I'm very, very interested in that. So a little bit about the future.
Sure.
Both personally, professionally, what do you hope to see in Americus?
Someone accused me after we were here about 4 months of working for the Chamber of Commerce. Now, I do serve on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, but as I said earlier, we're about working for our entire community. And I see a community with just so much untapped potential. You know, one of the things I share with folks, both here and when they ask about Americus, is show me another community of about 15 to 16,000 people in the United States that has our academic horsepower. We have an upper division university. We have the #1 rated technical college. We have an Ignite College and Career Academy. We have the Sumter County schools. We've got Furlough Charter Schools. You know, we've got Southland Academy. I mean, our academic horsepower here, and even at Georgia Southwestern, one of the top 3 rated nursing programs in the state. We have amazing academic horsepower, and that's just the start. As you referenced earlier, there's a charm that this community has. You know, we are fortunate that we're able to find a house that sits close to Lake Collins, and it's no more than probably 9 minutes from here. And when I arrive there, I'm like in the most idyllic setting, away from the hustle and the bustle. So, and of course, we have our historical district and the beautiful homes that people have invested in that are restored. Recently, I've become a bit more engaged with the revitalization of Southland Village, because housing is an area of challenge for us as a community. So I just see, to borrow from my friend Mayor Lee Kinnaman, Lee loves to say the arrows are all pointing up. And I think too often, does it mean we're perfect? No. But I think too often we focus on what isn't working well. And we engage in these negative narratives about the place that we are privileged to call home. So I just see so much untapped potential in our community for growth, for focused and targeted economic development. You know, people get excited if a business with 2,000 folks decide to come to your community. Well, I'm not sure. I know we're not ready for 2,000 new folks moving in here, but by the same token, let's focus on targeted economic development so that we can grow, so that we can have a richer future for our children and our children's children.
Absolutely.
So being, our moniker is Shining City on the Hill.
That's right.
And for me, I just do not look at Americus. I always look at Sumter County.
Yeah.
Sumter County is our primary service area as a hospital. It's my home. And how can we enhance it and make it better?
Yeah, absolutely. And 2 national parks in Sumter County. I mean, there's a lot
the
that
list
can draw
goes
people,
on
right?
and on.
Yeah.
It
Absolutely.
does.
And really, like you said, when you get here, like I've mentioned this before a few different times, but as soon as we got here, people started networking us, getting us connected. They're asking us, who did you use? Because they want to make that connection. They want to know who they know so they can become more friends with you. And so it's definitely a great opportunity for us to take that and say, hey, this is where you can invest your time, your family, your finances into to continue to see.
So it's like this past weekend. I mean, how many communities our size? A couple days ago, we had Taste of Sumter. Then this past weekend, the Music Fest, that ran for almost 12 hours. I mean, it's just, we have so much currently to offer, but the potential is unlimited in my eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. So economically, as far as even just city development, any other things that you would want to see in the future, professionally or personally, that you hope that we grow in?
This, as you shared with me, this is about being neighbors. It's about community. And I think we need to continue to work on seeking to achieve that. And I'm not only speaking from an ethnic perspective, but bringing multiple voices to the table. I have the privilege to interact, as I said, with people from various levels, some folks who have lived here for decades and others like us, they have just moved here. And I think we have to work on being more intentional in bringing as many voices, diverse voices. And when I use the word diverse, I like to focus on diversity of thought more than anything else to the table and listen to those voices instead of thinking, well, I've been here for a long time. I know what's best for Americus. And just give them a seat at the table and an opportunity to enrich our community. So that's just something that I'm committed to doing, and I'd like to see more of us committed to doing it. I know we've worked together some on just the issue of homelessness. A lot, everybody says it has to be addressed, but not in my neighborhood, right? I mean, that's the way it is. And candidly, my passion for that was ignited about 3 months after we were here. We arrived in September. In December, we had a few very cold nights. And one of the things I tell people my most important degree is my MBWA. I manage by walking around. So I love to round in the hospital. And since we're 24/7, I like to pop in on weekends and nights and not just focus on the daytime crew, quote unquote. And it was one of those cold evenings I just stopped by, and our emergency room, the waiting room, just had wall-to-wall people. So I inquired of some of the staff members who've been here for a while, and they said, oh, on cold nights, our waiting room becomes the warming shelter. If the warming shelter at Friendship is full, people just come here so they can be warm. And okay, we've got to find a better way to address this. So that was a part of the catalyst. I even probably made a few of my pastoral friends a little upset when I said, George Barna years ago wrote that the most underutilized real estate in most communities is the church. Because we don't want people to mess up our churches, right? And our fellowship halls. So we're open on Sunday or maybe Wednesday night. But for the rest of the week, it's locked up. And I'm saying, come on. you've got nice fellowship halls. At least you can open it for a few nights and let people warm up instead of the emergency room and one or two other churches. So I'm aware that a few other congregations have opened up their doors, but that's what community is about. Giving each other a hand up. I'm never about giving people a handout, but giving them a hand up so that they can become productive citizens of society.
Yeah, that's great. And I think about when you mentioned even diversity of thought, and as I've been here and I've been listening and trying to understand just kind of I think about like the identity of Americus and the values of Americus. If we have a collective understanding of who we are as a community, even with those diversity of how we want to see that take place, we can all still come together and be unified and say, but we know that this is who we are.
Absolutely.
And I think that healthy communities could figure out what their identity is and what their values are. Even in a marketing sense, you know who you are, and you can share that with the world or with other communities. And so I mentioned to you before that if Americus came into your office and said, hey, give me a health diagnosis, when you think about the identity of Americus or even the values of Americus, what do you think makes Americus Americus?
I think our rich history, and I'm still learning about that rich history, sometimes our challenging history. Again, one of the other projects that I am more peripherally participating in is the restoration of the Colored Hospital. And we have committed as a system, as Phoebe, to have a small clinic there, primarily to offer preventative screenings, because as you know, it's intended to be a museum. And as visitors are there, they can stop by and have their blood pressure checked or their glucose checked, just to offer them that opportunity. We hope it won't be a problem when the numbers return, but if they are, we can, if they're visiting from out of town, we can redirect them, encourage them to go to see their primary care physician if they have one, or we may be able to at least get the ball rolling to address their needs. So I think that's going to be, just an amazing addition to our community. You asked about a diagnosis. My diagnosis will go back to just our potential. That, we've got a few ills that we need to address, but they're all addressable. This patient is nowhere close to being terminal or having, and to use that metaphor, conditions will only become chronic if we choose not to do anything about them.
Correct.
And it is up to us to make that choice to address whatever our identified chronic conditions may be. Another thing we're participating with is just the whole initiative to address gun violence in our community. Why is it? What is, and then you talk about diagnosis, what is systemic? I mean, it's like if I'm pre-diabetic, I need to take a look at my diet and how much I exercise instead of saying, well, I'm going to keep eating what I want to eat and I'm going to sit on the couch and hope for the best. We can't hope for the best as a community. We've got to face our challenges objectively and work together for creative solutions. And it is up to us to change a lot of the negative narratives. A friend of mine who is an author always loved this statement that he came up with. And he said, language is the software of the mind. And if you continue to engage in a negative narrative, all you're doing is dragging everybody and everything downwards. So it's up to us. I give you a quick little example at the hospital, and I learned this from a mentor. Soon after I came to Americus, I told the team in the emergency room, patients who come frequently to our emergency room, we will no longer call them frequent flyers, which is the term that's used in healthcare. And candidly, it's a pejorative term. So they're like, so what do you want us to call them? I said, we're going to call them MVPs. And they all looked at me like, they're multiple visit patients. But even the staff members, some of them who now call the patients MVPs, they said, it just puts me in a different frame of mind. When I see this frequent visitor to an emergency room coming and I say, here comes another one of our MVPs. It changes the entire outlook. And I think it is up to us to just craft narratives about our community that are truthful, but positive.
Yeah. And I think too, you mentioned earlier before that definition of leadership is just continuing to stand strong and saying, no, we are going to define reality.
Yeah. We're going to face it and define it.
And, social media, people with, we've talked a lot on the podcast with entrepreneurs. One of the things I love about entrepreneurs is they don't get tired of the word no. They just keep going. But at some point, a lot of people have heard their last no, and it becomes very sarcastic to them. Everything becomes doom and gloom because they've heard no, and they don't realize there's still a yes somewhere, and they just can keep going. And so I think what we're describing here is a future that where leadership just continues to help shape the reality of, we're not lying, we're not trying to cover up. We're being honest about where we are and where we want to go. And I think the more and more we do that, obviously the more people will get excited about what is and what's to come. And so I just want to say thank you so much for being here, because that's the leadership that we need, not just in the healthcare system, but just another stakeholder, another person in our community who's fighting for it, who's picking up, the trash, helping be a part of the community and not just saying, hey, we should be doing this. So I think that's what we talk about, even as we kind of get to this last section of what can we do as neighbors? And sometimes it's just being aware. It's going outside of our front door and looking around and going, hey, am I so busy just doing my thing and getting in my car and going? Or am I coming to community events, spending time, looking around, listening to people? And I think that obviously builds a lot of trust. We talk about that as well. So what are some things, outside of, systems and organizations, what are some things that you do or that we can do just as neighbors?
One of my favorite books, and it's pretty hefty, but it's titled A Testament of Hope. And it's a collection of all of the essential writings and speeches of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And one of my favorites in there is the sermon he preached on who is my neighbor. And obviously it was based on the story of the Good Samaritan, as we call it. And it was a reminder that, the people who stepped over that guy were the church folk. Not just the church folk, the church leaders. The pastors and the presidents of the church organizations. And then the one who helped him, and this isn't a political statement, this is just fact, was the immigrant, was the one that he hated. And, the detestable Samaritan was the one who helped him. But he didn't just pick him up and bind his wounds and put him on his donkey, but he took him to an inn and he prepaid the innkeeper and said, please take care of him while I go on my journey. And if I owe you anything, I'll settle up when I come back through here. And that story always will resonate with me, because I think at times the people that we may think should be the ones to help are not the ones who do that. And it comes back to that definition of who really is my neighbor. And as I referenced earlier, my wife and I are richly blessed. And any way that we can assist, that's what it's about. And sometimes that may be with material resources. Sometimes it may be just being there and mentoring and supporting, probably being overly transparent. But one of the things that appealed to my wife and I about this opportunity to move to Americus, because we like to do our homework before we come to a community, was the fact that this community is over 60% African American. And even here in the fourth quarter of my career, if I can influence just a few people, candidly, who look like me, to say, you know what, my potential is to become a CEO one day, then we have accomplished what we are here to accomplish. Because I think too often people see the ceiling. You know, Phoebe Sumter, or some variation of it, has been serving this community for over 116 years.
Wow.
The first hospital started by a group of ladies, I love history, you know, back in 1908. And in that 116-year history, I'm the first person who looks like me serving in this role. I'm thankful for the opportunity, but for my wife and I, we see it as a calling of enormous stewardship and trust. And every day we pray that we are given the opportunity to influence somebody's life. And yeah, they don't have to look like us, but you know, as I've gotten to know folks in this community, I mean, I'd stop at the auto parts store and the guy's like, "Are you really the CEO of the hospital?" Yeah, I am. And your children, your grandchildren, they have the potential to sit in my seat one day, and hopefully some word that may be said to them will influence them to not set a ceiling on who they are and who they can become. So that's for us an even higher calling, to be a part of this community and to be willing to engage in the dialogue of people who, for justifiable reasons, are not very trustful and trusting of people who don't look like them, because, you know, we have a past here as a community. And my goal is to assist folks in moving forward. And I have met many individuals who are willing to do that. So I am enormously optimistic about our future.
Yeah, I am too. And I tell people all the time that we feel like this last 2.5 years that we've been here, that we feel like we've kind of been on this wave of good things, and I tell people that have been praying for 10, 15, 20 years here, thank you so much for your prayers, because I feel like I didn't have to do all of that. I just got here and I'm seeing all these things take place.
You're the beneficiary.
Yeah, right. And so it's really exciting to be a part of the community in this moment in time in history. In fact, when down here where it's changing, one Sumter has bought the Habitat area, turning that to a historical park, museum.
The Pearly Brown.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. We bought a brick. I was like, our name is going to be here. We want to be a part of this history.
Absolutely.
And so it is exciting to know that we can be a part of shaping it together, even as a community, continuing to find ways to come together, not just based on the past, but based on this beautiful future that we want to create. So, one of the things that we do at the very end as well is you get a chance to do what we call rapid fire questions, which are just really short questions, short answers, to get a chance to get to know you a little bit better if someone hasn't had coffee with you or talked with you a little bit. So we'll throw out about 5 or 7 and we'll see where we end up. So you talk a little bit about, libraries, books, readings. Do you have a favorite book or an author?
My favorite book will always be the Bible.
Yeah.
And there are 66 books in there with multiple authors. But from just an overall reading perspective, I've always loved to read various perspectives and books on leadership. I referenced the one that has influenced my leadership journey, by Max Dupree. Max's first book, Leadership is an Art. He followed it up with a second that I like equally, and that is Leadership Jazz. So another book, and it's a little book, but I was introduced to it many years ago by Robert Fulghum. Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And it is profound in its simplicity. It starts with, wisdom was not at the top of the graduate school mountain, but there in the sand pilot's Sunday school.
Yeah.
These are the things I learned. Play fair. Don't hit people. Put things back where you found them.
Yeah.
It is just profound in its simplicity. And, he ends by saying, just think of what a better world it would be if we all at 3:30 in the afternoon laid down with our blankies and had a nap or ate cookies and warm milk. It's just profound in its simplicity. But I think voracious would be a good word. Reader. I just love to read all sorts of things. I'm not a big reader of fiction. Just like to read things that, as my daughter would say, that make me go, they make me think.
Have you read any leadership of Simon Sinek?
Yep.
I like him. I like his relational feel of leadership.
I love, he talks about, as individuals, as leaders, we all need to discover our why. Yeah. If you don't have a clear why, then you will lead a very circuitous leadership path. But what is your personal why? Why do you get up in the morning? I mean, why do you do so many of the things you do? So Simon Sinek is one of my favorites. I probably listen to more of his podcast.
That's right.
Than read what he has written. But just excellent stuff.
Now, I heard just recently, and I could be wrong, but do you play golf?
I do.
All right.
Golf is a part of my therapy.
Okay. All right. Yep. So, any other sports or just golf? And
golf is probably my favorite.
Okay.
Because that's kind of what I have time for. Now, when I was a teenager, my skills have diminished since then, but I was pretty good at table tennis.
Okay.
And I love to wear out my American friends who ask me if I want to play ping pong. And I'm like, I don't play ping pong. I play table tennis. Those are two very different
tennis,
games.
Then you might want to step back a little bit. Just let them
I will not play ping pong with you, but I will play table tennis. Sounds like a bit of a snob, but they're two very different games.
Yeah. That's great. Okay. As far as vacations, do you like to go to the beach, mountains, city? Where you find yourself?
Years ago, we began a cadence that I love. About every 3 years, the pandemic kind of threw us off schedule. But my wife plans a trip, and our children have always come with us, even though they're now adults. At least now they can buy their own airline ticket. But to various parts of the United States or the world.
Okay.
So, and we always do it at Christmas time. So we have done New York at Christmas time. We have been to Australia and New Zealand at Christmas time, which, because of the part of the world they're in, that's their summer.
Yeah.
So, you go to Bondi Beach in Australia and it's 100 degrees on December the 26th. Because of our British heritage, my wife and I both, grew up in British colonies at the time, now independent nations. We have done the UK for one of our Christmas trips. My wife and our daughter, they love to travel a lot more than I do. Believe it or not, and that's where the introvert-extrovert part comes in. I enjoy people at work, in social settings. When I get home, I just enjoy home. I want to be quiet and read or look at something that is informative on television or watch golf or something like that. But they travel a lot more than we do. So they have been to Japan and Greece. And so, and I just enjoy my 2 weeks at home by myself.
Yeah, absolutely. During this time. Is there any dream location that you would like to go to at some point? Or
as a matter of fact, we are planning to go with a group from GSW next year.
Okay.
They're going to Ireland.
Oh, great.
So that's been on our list for a while. We're going to go without our children this time. That's fine. But we're looking forward to that trip.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. What about a go-to healthy comfort food? I can't say go-to comfort food because it might not be.
Go to healthy comfort food. Because we grew up in the Caribbean, we still love fruits.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I was sharing with you, I just returned from a 5-week educational sabbatical in Kenya, and about 5 kilometers from the university is an open air market, a large open air market where fresh fruits and vegetables are brought in. So for us, our ultimate comfort food are Julie mangoes. It's a form, or it's a variety of mangoes that it's like you're eating a sugar bomb. And so I got me some Julie mangoes while there, love papayas, fresh pineapples. Everyone that I got was just ultra sweet.
Was Astrid like, don't come home without having these things?
No, but she tries to keep me healthy. Let's just put it that way. You know, when our children were born, we raised both of them vegetarian. We're not vegetarians, and they have remained vegetarians. So we hardly cooked meat in the house during their formative years until they left for school. So even today, I still would prefer a vegetarian breakfast sausage to a regular breakfast sausage. But fruits. Yeah. As a matter of fact, my ultimate comfort food while in Kenya was sugarcane juice. Right across from the university, there was a little kiosk where a young lady pressed fresh sugarcane, and she would put limes and ginger with the sugarcane. So I consumed way too much sugarcane juice while I was there. Okay. But that's my ultimate comfort food.
I love it. I love it. Some other things. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
I am more of an early bird.
Okay.
My wife will tell you, you call me after 9:30, I'm probably about to go to sleep or asleep. Okay. But I love, I'm awake at 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay. And just, for me, that's my reflective time, my quiet time. Yeah. Kind of getting centered for the day.
All right. Coffee, tea?
I'm more of a tea person. Okay. And especially, and that's probably attributable to my British heritage. But I'm not, as a matter of fact, even though I came in here with iced coffee, I always traumatize them because I asked for a decaf. I'm just not a fan of caffeine.
All right. If you could have, this will be one of the last questions, but if you could have dinner with anyone or coffee with someone, tea with someone, if you could do that with any 3 people, living or dead, who would that be?
President Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle. I would love to dine with them. And then the Dalai Lama, and deceased would be Mother Teresa. So.
Wow. All right. And then do you, as far as songs, do you have a favorite song or a favorite artist that you like to listen to? Or
My wife and I both seek to be musicians. We used to sing in a musical group. Nice. And so we gravitate towards Christian music. And the list is pretty long there, but I just love, believe it or not, Gaither, Southern Gospel, any variety of that. Absolutely love that. But if you come into our home, it's a broad spectrum of music. As much as I love Gaither, I also love elevation worship, as a matter of fact. The music of Casting Crowns. Absolutely love that. As a matter of fact, some years ago, for my birthday in October, our son got us tickets when we lived in D.C. to a 3-hour concert, and it was Hillsong United, Elevation Worship, and Casting Crowns. Wow. And I was in music heaven.
That's right. I love it. Well, Carlyle, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, for sharing a little bit of your story, just the exciting things that are happening in our city, especially when we're talking about healthcare and even the future of Americus. And I'm excited to continue to work with you, talk with you, be a stockholder in this community, continue to see it thrive. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Absolute honor to be here, and looking forward also to working with you to as our mayor would say, to keep those arrows going upwards.
Yeah, I love it.
Thank you.
All right. We're good.
All right.
Oh, that was great. Thank you so much. All right, two things real quick. So probably going to take pictures of us real quick here.